Ben, starting with you. Does Max Verstappen have one handled championship, and is it really over?
Well, first of all, before I get into my comments here on the F1 segment, welcome to Team Esha. Happy to have you. I think this is the first time we've been on the air together. Great to have another member of a team discussing what you're right, Joe. Has been a phenomenal Formula One season here for Red Bull, phenomenal season for Max Verstappen, and I think we're getting the easy questions out of the way early tonight, right? Because of course Max Verstappen has one hand on the championship, and I'll even go a step further and say I think Red Bull have one hand on the constructors' championship because for all we've been talking about Sergio Perez struggling and to match Max Verstappen's pace, struggling to get everything out of the Red Bull that he ought to be getting out of it. He did have a nice recovery drive to get back to the podium again today, but he is still solidly second in points, a full race worth of points ahead of Fernando Alonso in the championship to secure second for Red Bull there. And looks like they could take the 1-2 finish that they were hoping to get last year, but they still haven't gotten one of a few things they haven't done in their time in Formula One. I think they've got that pretty much on lockdown at this point as well, even if Checo continues to underperform a little bit, because let's be honest, he's been underperforming and he still has a solid gap over third place in the championship himself. So it's been absolutely incredible to watch for dominance. And I'll make this note, Joe, you talk about Max Verstappen, how much he's been winning. He's on a streak of 7 in a row now. The record is 9. It's held by a former Red Bull driver, Sebastian Vettel. And you could also make an argument it's held by Alberto Ascari, shared record as well. Ascari's record kind of gets a little iffy when it comes to, how some people view the championship back then, because of course the Indianapolis 500 used to be part of the World Championship, but very few European teams made the trip over. So of the 9 straight races that Ascari started, he won 9 in a row there. So you could say he shares the record with Sebastian Vettel. If Max Verstappen is able to continue this stretch, he would tie the record at his home race in the Netherlands, and he would break the record at Ferrari's home race in Monza in the Italian Grand Prix, which would also be Alberto Ascari's old home track and the home track of Ferrari. Of course, Sebastian Vettel drove for Ferrari for many years as well. He didn't win a championship for them like Ascari did, but how do you like that? It works out so perfectly that he could break the record, that he could tie the record at his home race and break their record at their home race. It's been absolutely phenomenal what Verstappen and Red Bull have been able to do so far this season.
Yeah, I agree with him. Everything that Red Bull has accomplished, specifically Max Verstappen, has been amazing this year so far. And, I think that Max Verstappen is well on his way to being the world champion again this year. The lead that he has over the rest of the teams is insane. And even if other teams like Ferrari, McLaren, or Mercedes bring more upgrades and better strategies, Max is already too far ahead this season. For example, if you take a look at McLaren's performances in the last 3 races, you can see that they've improved big time. Yet, they've even got the podium, but even today, Max in the last few laps was over 30 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. And if you look at Mercedes' performance today, Lewis Hamilton himself said that they just don't have the pace to compete with the Red Bulls or to beat Max Verstappen. So I think it's safe to say that Max will definitely be crowned world champion at the end of the season.
I'll tell you what, somewhere Steve Matchett's smiling. I know Steve Matchett was always keeping track of the perfect season possibilities for Mercedes when they were so dominant back when NBC had the Formula One rights. I put a poll out on my social media, both my Twitter and my Instagram, asking my followers, do you think Red Bull can pull this off here? You've got to get 11 before you can get 22. They've done that. They're halfway there. And Twitter seemed to believe that they are going to do it. I think it was about 67-33, 2/3 in Red Bull's favor that they would pull off the perfect season. The Instagram was the exact reverse. It was 67% saying no, they're not going to pull off the perfect season. But the caveat there is that only 3 people voted, despite 50 people watching my story. So if you follow me on Instagram, go back and vote on the poll. I know not everybody who follows me is an F1 fan, but I'd like to see a little bit more participation in the poll here and see, do you think Red Bull can pull off what has never been pulled off before? McLaren came so close back in 1988. Mercedes came so close in 2016 with 19 of 21. Red Bull had 22 races. They got the first 11. Do you think they can get the second 11 as well? Let me know, and we'll have that conversation from there.
I gotta say, I feel like the only way Red Bull will lose a race, if they beat themselves, they make a mistake. We keep talking about these teams bringing upgrades. It just seems like they have something else up their sleeve.
Well, Joe, just to follow up on that one more time, thinking back to the last time we had a near perfect season in Formula One, if you think back to the 2 races Mercedes lost in 2016, what were they? It was Spain and Malaysia. In Spain, Hamilton and Rosberg took each other out. In Malaysia, Lewis Hamilton lost an engine. Now, if we play that game, I suppose you have to give Monaco to Red Bull and Daniel Ricciardo because they forgot to put his tires out when he was coming into the pits. But if you look at it one way, if you give 100% luck and favor to Mercedes in that regard, that was the only thing stopping them from a perfect season in 2016 was a crash between the two teammates and an engine failure later on in the year. So that may very well be the only thing that can stop Red Bull at this point is if they beat themselves.